Sweet. And to close out the night, we have the moment you've all been waiting for. Poet and translator Zachary Schomburg is up next. Zachary was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and raised in Iowa. He got a BA from the College of the Ozarks and a PhD in creative writing from the University of Nebraska. His books include The Man Suit, Scary No Scary Fjords, Volume 1, and he is the publisher of Octopus Books and lives in Portland. We have some of his other books for sale in the back, as well as his new novel he's out touring from. So make sure you show him lots of love tonight, chat with him afterwards. Are you on a big tour?
Yeah.
I don't even know. What are you doing next?
Love it.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Cool. So yeah, make sure you show Zach lots of love tonight. Give it up.
How are you guys doing? Good. I'm gonna read some new poems first. You cool with that? I peek before the prayer is over. There's nothing else to do. There are no miracles. Nothing is amazing. The pieces of the mug my mother drank from hover. One of the pieces looks like an arrowhead, one like a crane trying to take off. The maze is shaped like an 8. I turn left and I'm more in the center. It's not like a statue you can see. I'm hungry, so naturally I pick a fruit. I put my feet up. I'm ready for the omens. Flowers and insects remind me of growing up. Oh yes, Mother's teacup. The watermelon from the tragic picnic. The rubber gloves for death. The air is still. The center never ceases to call. Some people have died standing up. They look like waves, flocks of birds from afar. I move their hands around like 8s. It's what you're supposed to do. I recognize the jauntiest one. He looks like my friend. My friend is a shape. Like this, everything piles up but me. Do you guys like Toyota Coronas? I love them. That will be the next car I own. I only drive a Toyota Corona. I know what I'm doing. I slow down. I come to a stop. I'm underwater. It's not like it is in the song. My shoes are hand-me-downs. I'm like a snowflake. I'm like a bird in a cup. I tap on the glass. Erica, I think? No, Helen. It's a questionable method. It's not that kind of bank. Are these working? All right. It's like a sea of heat. Buzzes like an electric saw. The kid shows up with shorts on. Where'd you get those shorts? The Gap? Do you have any change? Kids always have big bills. This kid had exact change. He's a champ at math. He sews his own clothes. In this world, so few sew, so few do. Pasta is my favorite food. It's time to eat. I make a face with the noodles. It looks familiar. The plate bites my fingers off. I drop the plate and it breaks. That's enough pasta. That's Randy's favorite poem of it. I wrote it while we were eating pasta. I named the boat George Washington. It slaps on the gentle waves. I ride George Washington to the art museum. Wait, this isn't the art museum. I didn't know I knew how to play guitar. My fingers just go. I move them around like a dying spider on the stairs. Out comes sharp-dressed man. These riffs make thee weep. People might as well be flowers. These flowers too make thee weep. Look how they falter and bend. One's hemline is a lived life. One can tuck a cuff. You think I'm good for the 2 more? All right. I like these. These are new, so it's fun to read the new ones. Thank you for indulging me. It sounded like you said attaching a self to the wall. It looks crooked. My neighbor walks in with my t-shirt on. He tells me about remath, but I already know all about remath. He gives me a problem. 10, I say. We all nod our heads until our necks ache. I suddenly remember my winter coat. I wonder where my winter coat is. There's dust everywhere. It's like dunes in the desert. It really did sound like you were saying self, like the self falls, like nailing in the self. I'm on a new highway. It goes forever if I want. Then I pull off of it. I order the first thing on the menu. Is it Christmas? I think that in another language. But which one? I'm not ready. So I just order the box. I'll just have the box. But I say it like, box. It's a good thing I had 5 dimes. Is it Christmas? What? Says the woman. Is it Christmas? It feels like I'm in an on microwave. It feels like day 2 of a long war. All right, new poems. I will read, I wrote a novel for the first time. I'm really proud of it, and I'm going to read you a little chapter from it. I just met a new friend, Caitlin, who, it didn't occur to me, she said, I read this book on a plane. And that was just so exciting to me. Like, it didn't occur to me that people were going to actually read the book. Like, you don't think about that. Like, here's the book, and they're actually reading it. And, but also, like, on a plane over an ocean, I don't know, it's just really exciting to me. And she said, she gave me the idea to read a poem about this thing called the death lessons. Well, there were kids here before. I was going to say there's the F word in it. And the joke was going to be, if you don't like that, it's Caitlin's fault, because she picked out the chapter. I'll tell it in. So I have to tell you a few things. I put these I don't know. I think that thing fell off. My mom gave me these for Christmas in my stocking. It's the first time I've used them. It worked. So there's a couple things you need to know. At this point, there's this character named Mano, and he is kind of in opposition to this corporation who's fighting off this thing called God's finger. Everybody's dying because God's poking them in the chest and killing them. And the corporation's making a lot of money because they're selling cages to people so that they won't die from God's finger. But unfortunately, only the rich people can afford them. So Mano is trying to kind of combat that by saying, let me teach you to stop buying cages. Let me teach you that death is, let's be cool with that and not capitalize on it. So he starts this thing called the death lessons. He's the town butcher at this point also, and so we're going to learn a little bit about what the death lessons is, which I don't know, I don't probably need to explain much more about it. The other thing is he always has this poodle, and that's his friend. Kind of like a shadow, but a friend. And there's Mitzi, who's his boyfriend's mom, who's dead. Who died early. From God's finger. Okay. Anything else you need to know? Any questions? Pie Time was swelling with death tourists. XO was spreading the word of God's finger to nearby towns, and tourists wanted to take their chances to see a resident of Pie Time show up dead with a large, strange hole in the chest. No one who was not a resident of Pie Time had yet died, so the tourists felt safe. With the exception of the humanitarians, no one from Nun's Hat had known anything of God's finger in Pie Time until very recently. The humanitarians walked into Mano's butcher shop wearing XO life cages. The man and woman had the same kind of beauty that June Good had, the kind that belonged in cigarette ads. Their skin was so perfect, and their teeth were so white and straight, it was easy to forget that a skull hid behind them. Their bodies seemed indestructible, impervious to any kind of death. They looked sturdy and giant in their cages. They looked like something a child would want to play in. "I think you're looking for XO Meats," said Mano. "It's across the street." Other than all of the new XO businesses, Mano's butcher shop and barber shop with their double doors were the only other places that people wearing black cages were physically able to enter. These were the only doors wide enough for people with cages to enter. Soon the people who could afford XO life cages for their bodies could also afford to cut larger doors into their own homes. When the humanitarians entered Mano's butcher shop, the shoveler, Ernesto, and Ernest were already standing just inside the double doors. The shoveler had been waiting for the cuts of sheep that he had purchased. His sons, Ernesto and Ernest, were behind the counter helping Mano grind the mutton. They had become very familiar with Mano's butcher shop, and they were quickly becoming experts with the equipment. Ernesto ran around the corner and jumped up on the lowest bar of the woman's black cage. He swung his feet around to the second lowest bar on the cage, and then he hung upside down from his knees. "Ernesto, down!" commanded the shoveler. "It's okay, he's just having fun," said the woman. The humanitarians had been trained well to be calm and polite in any situation. Ernesto climbed higher until he was inside the black cage with the woman. The woman hugged Ernesto. "It's safe in here with me, Ernesto. You see, thanks to XO in here, we're safe from God's finger," she explained to him. But really she was explaining it to Mano and the shoveler. Like XO, it was in the humanitarians' best business interests that people keep dying. God's finger created as much demand as panic, and the XO life cages could only be rented by the month, never owned, so that demand would never dwindle, even if God's finger appeared cured. The man reached into his black cage with his arms to tip his cap. "Gentlemen, sorry to bother you, but we're not looking for XO Meats at all. In fact, we're just here to tell you about how you can rent your own life cage." "We already know about it, asshole." "Thanks," said Mano dismissively, and with the same angry tone he used with everyone else wearing cages. "But would you like some sheep? I butchered one last night." "Hey, I didn't mean to upset you," pleaded the man. "Do you want some sheep or not?" Mano asked, holding up a bloody sheep's leg. Ernest put down his own cut of sheep to walk over to the humanitarians. He moved his finger along one of the woman's iron bars. "Do you mind?" asked the shoveler as he shook the woman's cage a little. "No, of course not. Do you have any questions about it?" asked the man. "What's it made out of?" Ernesto asked. "It's like iron, but lighter," answered the woman. "Like iron, you say?" "Right," said the shoveler. "That's exactly right. So, is it iron?" "That's a lot like it," said the man. The humanitarians tried to act natural while their cages were being studied by everyone but Mano, who was making his lack of interest very obvious. The humanitarians acted as if what they were wearing was as common as a man wearing a cardigan with trousers or a woman wearing a sundress. Look, if you're going to be in here, you're going to need to buy some meat, commanded Mano. He chopped off another leg of a sheep so hard that it threw itself onto the floor. I'm trying to run a fucking business here. Mano picked up the leg and set it back onto the chopping block. We understand, said the woman. The humanitarians fought Mano's shortness with pleasantness, grace, and etiquette, which frustrated Mano even further. We'll take 2 cuts of whatever the special is. I don't have any specials. You want a leg? Yeah, please, a leg. That sounds lovely. Mano wrapped the leg that had just fallen onto the floor in brown paper. As he wrapped it, he half-heartedly blew on it to clean it. He set the package on the counter. How much do we owe you? Asked the man. It's free, said Mano. Free? Asked the man, surprised. But you said this is a business. How do you stay open? It's free for people who participate in the death lessons. Now you're going to need a death lesson, insisted Mano. What is a death lesson? Asked the woman. Totally fair question. I'll show you exactly what it is if you'll have it. The man and the woman looked at each other nervously while Ernest joined his brother climbing on the cages. Ernest had climbed all the way to the top of the woman's cage and was preparing to leap from the woman's cage to the top of the man's cage where Ernesto was maneuvering. I don't see why not, said the woman, struggling to stay upright so that Ernest wouldn't fall off the top of her cage. Sure, yeah, please, give us a death lesson. The man steadied his cage with the shifting weight of Ernesto above him. Great news, exclaimed Mano. Okay, first you'll have to take off those unsightly cages. Without hesitation, the man explained that taking off the cage was the only thing that they were not really willing to do. Hey, if death can't get inside your cage, then neither can a death lesson, explained Mano, suddenly proud of himself. Now take them off. The man and woman from Nun's Hat had been in Pie Time for many weeks before investing in exo life cages, and they hadn't yet died. It seemed reasonable to them that removing the cages for a few moments with Mano and the sheep pen would likely be okay. Besides, they knew they would have to remove the cages at various times during their lives for basic maintenance. Let's do it, said the man. If you say so, said the woman. They took off their cages like scuba divers taking off scuba equipment. A body that was once in a cage designed to protect it seems awfully small and vulnerable once it is removed from that cage, like a turtle. The man and the woman, although still very beautiful, looked very small and soft. In that moment, Mano looked even bigger. Everyone, including the shoveler and his 2 boys, walked through Mano's butcher shop, past his bloody chopping block, and out of the double doors in the back. Everyone stood in a line on the edge of the pen. You can ride them, said Ernest. You ride them? Said the man in disbelief. Don't you think I'll be too big and heavy to ride on the back of the sheep? They're strong, and they want to carry you. I see. Ernesto also added some basic information before Mano had the chance. And they're all named Curls. You can pick one, shouted Ernest. The shoveler tried to shush Ernest, who was getting very excited about his chance to co-teach a death lesson. The shoveler picked his son up and held him, but Ernest squirreled out of the hold. Pick one for what? The woman asked Ernest as he slipped from his father's grip. To die, answered Ernesto. Mano filled in some of the humanitarians' unanswered questions, and then he tightened the biggest sheep saddle he had on Curls. The man reluctantly lowered his weight down onto Curls, who was the biggest of all the sheep in the pen. He was reluctant to let go of all of his weight, fearing that he might injure the sheep, but Ernesto encouraged him. It's okay, he said. Just lift your feet off the ground now. They're strong. So the man from Nun's Hat did, and so did the woman. As they rode around in the pen, they laughed harder than they had laughed in a long time. They felt free and full of joy. They felt lighter. They were a part of the world. When the woman fell from Curls, she decided to rest in the mud instead of getting up right away. Curls walked over to her and licked her face. Curls' cold, pointy tongue tried to hollow out her nostrils. It made her laugh so hard that she cried. She rolled around in the mud until her entire body was covered in it, and she kept crying. The man, seeing her roll around in the mud, fell off of Curls and rolled around in the mud with her. Together they laughed and cried while Mano, the shoveler, Ernesto, and Ernest watched. "Now I will need your help." Mano interrupted the rolling. The humanitarians sat up on their elbows in the mud and listened. "I need you both to pick out a sheep." Unlike all the children before them when Mano asked this same question, the man and the woman refused to pick a sheep. They knew Mano's intentions. They whispered to each other, then turned to Mano. "We don't want to pick one." "That's no good. You have to pick one," Mano insisted. "In order to complete your lesson, you must pick a sheep." They whispered to each other again. The woman was most convincing in her whispering, and the man resigned with a sigh. "Okay, if we must pick a sheep, then we'll pick the smallest one." It made some sense to them that if a sheep had to die, that it be the one with the least meat, the one with the least to lose from death, the one that took up the least amount of space inside of their guilt. They picked the one that was, to them, more of an afterthought of a sheep. They pointed at the black poodle in the far corner of the pen. "Which one?" Mano was confused as to where the humanitarians were pointing. He tried to clarify. "The smallest black one," said the woman. "That one, right there." "I'm sorry, that's not a sheep," said Mano. "That's Mano's poodle," said Ernest. "It looks like a sheep. Look how poofy it is," said the man. "It does look poofy like a sheep, you're right, but it's definitely not a sheep," explained Mano. "But that's what we picked," said the woman. "We followed all the rules of your death lessons, and you asked us to pick, and that's what we picked." And it was. It was what they picked. The death lesson on this particular day had quickly become Mano's own. He trudged slowly and sloppily through the mud to plop down into it next to the black poodle. He pet it, and he told it he loved it. It was his first real chance to tell something, that he loved it before it died. And he did love it. He didn't love it like he had loved Pepe, and he didn't love it like he had loved his mother. But it was love. It was the kind of love that he had for himself, a love born from understanding, because they shared a space for so long. They had for so long now walked the same steps. They survived together. "I love you," he told it. And just like that, the love was true. "Hey, you don't have to butcher the poodle," said the shoveler, who put his hand on the back of Mano's shoulder as he sat in the mud. He tried to lean all the way down and give Mano a hug, but his back hurt from all the grave shoveling he had been doing lately. "I don't?" "No, you don't." But the shoveler was wrong. Mano did have to, and he knew it. Learning to let go of the thing you love once it is picked is the whole point of the death lessons. Without that point at its center, the death lessons just become senseless killing. So he picked the black poodle up and he carried it inside. He thought for a moment about Beulah and her dead husband, the postman. It was the postman's death hole from where the poodle came. The black poodle's butchering would be a butchering of Beulah's grief as much as it was a butchering of Mano's own love. The shoveler and his two boys followed Mano inside, then they said their own goodbyes to the black poodle. They left the butcher shop because they understood that Mano needed to be alone. The man and woman stayed on their backs in the sheep's pen, resting their bodies completely in the mud. Mano could hear them still giggling. When he looked back at them, they looked happy. They were staring at the sky. When they both closed their eyes, 2 blackbirds flew overhead. Mano sobbed as he told the black poodle what he was going to do to it. He looked it in the eyes and explained everything. "I'm going to stun you with this hammer," was the first thing he said. He showed the poodle the hammer that would stun him. He felt the weight of the hammer in his hands. It felt so heavy. It felt like maybe it was the same weight as the poodle. The poodle looked at the hammer as if it didn't know what a hammer was for. Mano picked up the poodle and placed it on its side. He held it down with one hand so it couldn't stand back up. He held the hammer above the poodle. Mano wasn't quite ready, so he said something else. He said, "I shouldn't have let you play in the mud today after Inez gave you a bath. Look at you. You're so muddy." Just the thought of Inez made the hammer in Mano's hands even heavier. He couldn't hold it up any longer, and he couldn't look at the poodle while the hammer came down, so he looked at the door. That's when Mitzi Let came back from the dead to knock on the front window of the butcher shop. And that's the end of the chapter. Thank you also to both readers and to both other readers and Malvern Books. I also run a small press, and I'm such a believer in small independent bookstores and presses. So you're here, so if you don't leave with one of our books, make sure that you think about leaving with some other book on the shelf. All right, thank you.